Okay, so we've got a good sense from activity 10-1, a good sense of what a box plot is and a 5-number summary. And we talked about modified box plots and outliers. And now it's time to work on interpretation. So that's what activity 10-2 is about. So you should try this activity on your own first, and then to use this video to either check your answers or to help you get unstuck if you get stuck. All right. Remember too that the 5-number summary and the box plot are summaries, so they don't contain all the data. They just contain a summary. So we'll be able to answer some of these questions, but not all of them. Okay. So the roller coaster database contains data on hundreds of roller coasters in the world, and the box plots display the distribution of top speeds in miles per hour for coasters in the U.S., classified by whether the coaster is wooden or steel. Okay? All right. So a couple things to remember when we're looking at our box plot, right, is that each whisker and each half of the box represent a quarter of the data, right, at least roughly, right? So the box, as we've said before, contains the middle 50% of the data, and then the whiskers contain the lowest 25% and the highest 25% of the data. Okay, this is really helpful for us in answering the questions in this activity. Okay, so first question, what proportion of the steel coasters have a top speed of 60 miles per hour or greater? Okay, so we're looking at the steel coasters at 60 miles per hour, the steel. Okay, so we've got 25% here and 25% above it. So 50%, right? 50% of the observations, right? The median, in other words, the median speed for the steel coasters happens to be 60 miles per hour. So half the observations are above that, okay? At least approximately. Okay, what proportion of the wooden coasters have a top speed of 60 miles per hour or greater? Okay. For the wooden coasters, 60 miles per hour is an important cut point too, right? It's the third quartile or the upper quartile. So what percent of the observations are above that? 25%. Okay? All right. Third question. Which type of coaster has a higher proportion of coasters with a top speed greater than 50 miles per hour, or are the proportions the same, or is it impossible to tell? Okay. All right. Well, we're looking at 50 miles per hour. All right. And look at, for both the steel and the wooden coasters, 50 miles per hour is the lower quartile, right? It's the beginning of the box. So that means for both of them, right, 25, 50, 75% of the observations, 25, 50, 75% of the observations are above 50 miles per hour. So it's equal, right? The proportions are the same. So in both cases, or for both types, 75% of coasters have a top speed above 50 miles per hour, right? Okay, good? Good. All right, on to part B. All right, which type of coaster has a higher proportion of coasters with a top speed greater than 45 miles per hour, or are the proportions the same, or is it impossible to tell? Okay, so let's try 45 miles per hour. Okay, that's there. All right, do we know? We can't say anything about the proportions with a top speed greater than 45 miles per hour. Well, we can say something, but we can't say much. I know that more than 75% of the steel coasters, or at least 75% of the steel coasters, have a top speed above 45, and at least 75% of the wooden coasters have a top speed above 45 miles per hour. But I don't know, right? Remember that there's the 5-number summary, or the box plot represents the 5-number summary, and the 5-number summary doesn't tell us about anything about the values in here, right? I know there's a value down here, and I know this is my first quartile, but I don't know how many values are in here, right? Or the proportion of values in there, right? So I can't answer the question, right? It is impossible to tell. Okay. Which type of coaster has more variability in its speeds? Or is the variability the same, or is it impossible to tell? Okay, remember how we can tell about variability, right? We have measures of spread, right? And I can't say anything about the standard deviations here, but I can speak about the range, and I can speak about the IQR, right? Can you see which one has the larger range? Surely, right? The steel coasters have a wide range, ranging all the way from 25 miles an hour top speed up to 100, right? So the range of the steel coasters is about 75 miles per hour. The range of the top speeds of the wooden coasters is between 40 and 65, so it's about 25 miles per hour, okay? So in terms of the range measurement, the steel coasters have a greater variability. Of course, range is not the best way to measure variability, right? Because it's so susceptible to outliers, right? Oh, in fact, I missed an outlier on the range for the steel coasters, right? The range for the steel coasters is from 25 up to 120, right? So it's 95 miles per hour. Oh, and I missed the outliers for the wooden coasters too. Okay, the range for the wooden coasters is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 78 miles per hour. Okay, regardless, the range of the steel coasters is greater. Okay, all right. We would rather measure variability using the IQR though here, right? And that is something we can really nail down well, right? For the steel coasters, the IQR is the difference between the upper quartile and the lower quartile. So it's 70 minus 50 or 20. And for the wooden coasters, the IQR is upper quartile minus lower quartile. It's 60 minus 50 or 10 miles per hour. Okay? So the IQR for the steel coasters, just like the range, is greater. So there's no ambiguity. The steel coasters have greater variability, right? Okay, last question. Which type of coaster is more prevalent? And we can't answer that, right? We have no knowledge of how many steel coasters are represented or how many wooden coasters are represented. They could be the same amount of each. There could be lots more steel coasters. There could be lots more wooden coasters. Remember that the 5-number summary tells us about the middle number, the median, the quartiles, right? The max and the min, but it doesn't tell us about how many values there are altogether. Okay, we can use it to talk about certain proportions, but we can't talk about the raw numbers. Okay, and that's activity 10-2.